Hey guys, James from SIKKY Manufacturing. On this episode of the Turnkey LS E30 Build series, we're going to get a lot done with the drivetrain. We're going to hang a new rear end in this thing, install the drive shaft, and upgrade the fuel pump. So for this build, we decided to go to the AEM 320 liter per hour fuel pump. It's a great pump for an engine in the mid fours. Start getting up, close to 500. You might have to do something a little different. But this should keep up with this engine and what we're going to be doing with this E30 LS build, since it's just a regular 6 liter, nothing, no power adders or anything like that. So pretty basic setup. Comes with the sock, filter, the actual pump itself with some other stuff for the install like the hose and wiring and clamps. So we've got everything we need to get this done, so it's time to get this back seat ripped out of here and remove the stock fuel pump. And once you do that, you get these 2 front brackets out, just slide the whole seat out. Alright, so now we're going to remove these 4 screws. And then we slide this sending unit right on out of there. Now that we got that out, we can take the pump, slide it over, and then work that straight out of there. Disconnect the positive and negative wires. So you can take this, slide that up on that hose, and rotate this into position, lining up the rubber piece with the bottom of this bracket. Many ways to secure the pump to the bracket. I like to use metal zip ties just because you know they're gonna last forever and less likely to break. So it's a really simple install. Alright, so now you're going to work this setup down in there carefully. Just make sure you manipulate it to go in easily. You don't want to rip the filter sock or do anything like that, but it'll drop back down in there. Make sure your O-ring stays up in here in its groove as you get down in here. And one note, make sure there's no obstructions for the fuel sender, so if you look down through the hole where the fuel sender slides in, you should be able to see all the way to the bottom. That way you know that install will go in easily. Now we're going to move on to installing the SIKKY drive shaft in our Project LS E30. This particular customer has an upgraded rear already that has a limited slip installed in it. So we're going to be taking out the differential that's actually in this car currently and putting this one in at the same time. So we're going to install the SIKKY provided drive shaft spacer, which is down here, on this rear before we put it in the car. And as well, we'll also install these rear spacers which move the rear down equally, so it doesn't actually change the pinion angle, but we're moving the rear down a 1/4 inch to make clearance right here for the drive shaft, but I'll show you that in a second. So we're gonna get this beefy drive shaft installed, and you can see the factory one's a lot smaller, and it's got this flimsy Guibo thing that'll cause us all kinds of trouble with this kind of power we're making now. So first step though is we got to get this factory rear out of the car and out of our way. Alright, so first step, we're going to unbolt these axles and get them off of the output flange. Now we're going to do the same thing to the other axle. situations like this. It's pretty much a needed. All right, so now we got all the hardware that's holding it out. So we're gonna carefully lower this down. Make sure you keep the axles out of the way on the way down. This is a gem of an E30 rear, so good riddance. So on this build, while we're in here, we got the rear out. It makes the sway bar install a lot easier. So we're gonna get this really little piddly bar out of here, upgrade it with this heavier unit, so this car will be handling and better able to handle the extra power it's going to have when this turnkey LS swap's all said and done. So first step, we're going to unhook these end links. We're going to be reusing the factory e-brake cable bracket, so we're going to unbolt that and leave that attached e-brake cable, but we're going to fully remove the factory bar and get this out of the way. All right, so now we're going to take the new bar, reverse of the install up over the fuel filler tube, and then use the supplied brackets and bolt it up. Alright, so the SIKKY spacers need to go between the differential and the subframe. This particular rear that the customer provided had studs in it. We had to remove the front studs because you got to get this up into the actual opening of the subframe, and it wouldn't allow that with a stud. So we're going to pre-install these spacers on the back studs, and then when it gets close, we'll take these guys and slip them in here right before we put the bolts in through the top. So now we're going to jack this thing up, get it in position, guide the snout up into the opening, and then raise up the back, get everything secured. So we're going to take the spacer, see I left just a little bit of a gap in there. We'll slide that guy in, and take our bolt. Same process as the other side. And we're actually going to slide the big bolt through the back of the bushing here. All right, now that all the bolts are loosely in place, we're going to go around and start tightening everything up. All right, then we torque these down all the way, and then move on to the last back bolt. All right, now the rear's in place, we're gonna put the axles back in. All right, now that we got all the axles tightened up, we're gonna move on and install the drive shaft. Just one note, make sure you, after you get 30, 40 miles on this car, come back and recheck all your drivetrain bolts, like your axle bolts and drive shaft bolts, just to make sure everything's still snugged up and tight and there's no issues going on there. So we're gonna get this drive shaft in, and we'll wrap up the drivetrain install for today. All right, so with the SIKKY drive shaft, because of the way the drive shaft has to get installed on the rear side first, we actually have a unique feature on here where we're running a removable yoke. So we're actually gonna, it comes pre-assembled just so you know how it goes together, but before you do the install, you actually have to take the yoke off, and then that allows you to feed it into the differential side, get that bolted up. Then you can slide the yoke into the transmission, then raise the front of the drive shaft up and reinstall these U-bolts. So we're gonna get these out of the way and remove the yoke and then move on to installing the other end. All right, now we're ready to bolt it up to the rear. Because of the tight clearance, it makes it a little easier to use like a ball style Allen wrench so you can get it in there at an angle. Slide that on, get the nuts on the back side. going to fully tighten these U-strap bolts on the front U-joint. Alright, so that finishes the install of the drive shaft. So the rear's in, drive shaft's buttoned up, we've got axles hooked up, so we're pretty much done with this whole part of the car at this point. So that's a wrap of this episode of the E30 LS1 Turnkey Build Series. Make sure you subscribe, hit the notification bell so you don't miss the next episode.